so the first thing we have on the agenda is acceptance of minutes from November. I think those were emailed out.
Sure, and since we have two new official members this month, we have a new majority number that we have to hit to have a quorum. And it's 7. And we have 6 tonight. I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
Well, that's, no, wait, don't we have 7?
Voting member,
5, 6, 7,
not counting Rhiannon, Beverly, Tyler.
I was thinking Rhiannon was, no,
Not yet,
not yet.
hopefully.
All right, so we'll put that on the agenda for next month.
So
All right, so
That was the minutes,
the approving of last month's.
because I had some edits to it. Should I just do those next month
We
or?
can still do them now.
Okay.
So we could accept
Yeah.
vote on the minutes.
Okay, on item 11, CIP items. B, SIP work session took place. I would reword to, instead of push for 20,000, increase from 20,000 to 100,000. And then add a third one, which was one of the two that, one of the 3 that went forward and one of the 2 that was approved actually for the SIP is microtransit / shuttle loop bus / hybrid feasibility study for $100,000. So that was proposed by Councillor Cook and was passed unanimously, but that was put forward from the smaller meeting and was actually presented by me at the SIP work session. So we needed 3 items. And then I had some wording on the New Hampshire DOT project, but I could just send that in, the description of that, which was what Tyler brought up. And I just did some rewording about applying sustainability characteristics to the project.
For those who don't know, CIP stands for Capital Improvement Plan. I find,
You
I
got
have
it.
to say it over and over again because I keep losing.
So I could read those through really quickly. See if
Why don't
anybody
you
had
do? We got enough time.
objects, yeah. Okay, committee appreciates the opportunity to consider the sustainability characteristics of the project, which raises the larger question of the committee's role to bring consideration of sustainability, including climate impacts, to policies, programs, and projects. Then that's item 1. Number 2, committee discussed project implications, including traffic, walking, biking, safety, and accessibility, and will consider taking a closer look in the future.
Those were the minutes. I would vote yes, but since we can't.
So did you want to send those to Kate or do you want to send them
Sure.
to me and I can?
That'd be great.
Send them to Kate and then Kate can send them around as the next draft.
All right, we are flying through this agenda. We are on item 4. So, oh, sorry, we're on item 3. Welcome new members, Colleen Spear. Colleen Spear, apologies, and
Okay.
Maxon Ward. So we did just get to meet you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen.
Again.
See you all. I know some of you, but yeah, hello.
I just for the sake of us getting to know each other, sometimes on the committee, it's good to know what our area of interest or passion is particularly.
Mhm.
You have any that you're particularly interested in or have a particular expertise in?
I mean, I would say my expertise leans towards business engagement, and supporting businesses like in how they can assist with the community becoming more sustainable. But beyond that, still in sort of the listening and learning phase with this particular committee.
And when you work, what business are you working with or desire to work or the most comfortable working at scale wise?
Usually small to medium in any industry, US based, but not necessarily New Hampshire based. So I do audits, I do trainings, but overall it leans towards business strategy through a sustainability lens.
And just a little bit about your background of where have you gotten your information, education otherwise?
Yeah. So I went to the University of New Hampshire, got my bachelor's in business and sustainability. And then once I graduated, I started my company, Spearpoint Strategies. And then since then, I've been meeting a lot of people, trying to meet people in the sustainability industry, as well as keeping up with just my own professional development, largely with NHBSR, which some of you might know, and then also the International Society for Sustainability Professionals and the Future Fit Foundation. So I also, look at things from B Lab and Project Drawdown, but the groups I'm most active in are NHBSR, ISSP, and the Future Fit Foundation.
Thank you.
And I know in past meetings, we've talked about providing like some documentation as like a welcome package. Is this something we think we're ready to do, or are there any resources that would be helpful for Colleen?
I love your memory.
Okay,
And,
but
no, not in bucks. Bill Lyon has a copy of, remember we were gonna do the initial sheet and we maybe hand that out to people. Do you have that in a document? You could-
Which sheet?
When it was that you worked on 5 different drafts?
Oh, that was
Maybe
the climate conversations
Yeah,
template. You're
and
thinking of it. Probably the best source, which you may already have looked at, is the updated website,
Hmm.
including the recently added guidelines for the committee, which will give you a sense of our sort of newly defined perspective on things. But I think I think what you're thinking of is we talked about a template for the community conversations.
yeah, I think we did that, but I thought, remember?
summer, yeah, there was.
You were putting some documents together. And we said, that'd be great when somebody new came to the committee to give us an overview. And I can look up on site because I thought there was really a clear statement about public engagement and our priorities and connecting to the CAP and,
The guidelines, those are
Yeah.
the guidelines, and those are up on the website.
okay, so that's, all right.
Yeah.
So that's what we were thinking of as a packet, but
Cool.
since you know how to go to websites.
I can take care of that.
It's about
And you
3 or
can be-
4 pages, and
Perfect.
it's sort of principles for the committee, and it references the to the statutes or the enabling language council or
The ordinance?
ordinance, or references the ordinance, and then it has some examples of specific policies, programs, and projects where the committee could apply a sustainability perspective.
Awesome. Cool. I will check that out. Thank you for pointing me in that direction.
Fantastic. We are on number 4 now. So the committee presentation to the city council. Kate or Josh has any updates on this, or did we want to just talk about what we would be putting into that presentation in more detail?
So my question is, where it says confirm April 7th, has April 7th been confirmed? Like, is it a question or is it, so I'm guessing that's,
This is an FE subject.
okay, Effie's not here, but
I know we talked about April 7th last time. It felt like a it wasn't random because we were thinking of Earth Day, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was going to be before the fair, right? Sustainability fair, and around this council's schedule. Does that look like the council's schedule, Josh?
yes, I pulled the council schedule, which was emailed out.
I think that's
on it.
what, okay, I think that's what it was, is that
April
the
7th
council
is
meeting
the-
wasn't officially on the calendar last month yet.
And now it is.
So now we can officially say we can
April
be on part of that meeting.
So this is something we now are able to make a request for?
Would you like me to reach out to the mayor and city manager, or since we want to run one? I don't know what makes more sense.
Sure. Yeah, that would make more sense because it would probably come from Well, actually, no, it's an update from the whole committee. So would you be willing to introduce some committee members and then is the idea for a couple members to present or give the statement?
My recommendation, whatever it is to keep it under 10 minutes. So usually the less members that speak, the better, because it goes quicker. That's the extent of my recommendation. So whatever the committee wants to do with it. But I'm gonna reach out to the city manager and the mayor. Doing that. Starting to do that as we speak. That way, we'll have a response next meeting, whether it's definitively April 7th.
So assuming we get that date, that would leave us 3 committee meetings before that presentation occurs. Do we want to start pulling together what that presentation would look like now? Is that a working session outside of this meeting?
Would make sense to start discussing it sooner than later, but if Effie's the main driving force here, she's not here now. I don't wanna get too far out ahead of her.
So maybe next month we'll start driving this. That makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
If there's nothing else on that topic, I think we can move on. Alright. So item 5, the rules and procedures for the committee. Kate, you wanna take it away?
Yes, so they're finally here. So we have a draft that has been approved fully by the legal department, which took a bit longer than expected. But I think we might have gone over a draft of this in June or maybe May, and we talked about aspects that we wanted to put in that was like the purpose statement. So along with some stuff about what we do, the rules and procedures, basically every committee is supposed to have a set of rules and procedures that's voted on and approved. And the really necessary things are like membership rules, quorum rules, right to know law is spelled out. Whether there's chair, vice chair, things like that, acting chair rules. We also put in information about meetings and how they're monthly and they shall begin at 6:30 p.m. Originally, we had drafted the rules to be stating that there's a chair and a vice chair voted every January. We took out vice chair because we haven't had one of those ever. So if we want to add that in, we can do that. But I replaced, if the chair is not there, then an acting chair will be voted on. And if the acting chair is not there, then the committee will vote to appoint another acting chair. So that goes in more detail. But there's information on when agendas need to be posted, which is at least 24 hours in advance. Hopefully I never have it up that late. But if you did notice on today's, I screwed up the room location and we were supposed to be in the school department conference room. So I'm sorry about that. But there's information about meeting minutes and how they're recorded and how they're available, information on voting and how there must be a majority vote. And so right now our number is 12 voting members, including 2 Eco Club votes. So a majority would be 7 members. There's stuff about the right to know law. And at the very end, we wanted to put in a reference to the new guidelines for advancing sustainability. So we have that in there. And I also will probably include a link to our ordinance as a committee that's established the standing committee. I forgot to put that in, but if anybody had a chance to look it over. It's pretty straightforward. We tried not to put in too much that wasn't necessary, but the first page is really defining what we do. And then the rest is standard rules.
Yes.
I have an item that I've been contemplating for a while. Since I got on the committee under Steve Marchand, which was 6 mayors ago. I've been trying to think how I can best serve the committee. And we transferred from the Blue Ribbon Committee to a standing committee. I've been looking at how we've been actually functioning. And I'm aware that I enjoy facilitating. I feel I can have a contribution to make regarding the history of the committee and some of the big pictures. At this point, I think the bulk of the work has been done by the committee itself. And I happened to ask Effie a few months ago that I'm feeling I'm happy to serve, but since she's been doing so much on the ground work and writing minutes and researching, but hours of time, I said, would she be interested in sharing if I were to stay on the committee but step down from the chairperson? And then she said, no, I travel too much and that's not good. And then because she and Jess are good friends, I want to understand if this is correct. She said, Jess, how would you feel about co-chairing with me? Would you like to say what you responded to that? If, or do I have that correct at all?
Yes, you do. And I said, if that was what the committee wanted, then I would consider doing that role. But I think that sort of leads to another interesting point in what Kate said, that we no longer have a vice chair. And maybe we need to reconsider having that role so that if the chair is not available, the vice chair can be the one to step in and serve in whatever capacity is needed.
I like the idea for me, and this is what I think we want to check my legal. One of my strong experience in life is that I taught in the classroom for 20, 30 years by myself. Then I did another 20 where I co-taught. And I said, in the classroom, I never want to be a solo, or it'd be a very rare occasion that I want to solo or do anything without a cooperative chair or a co-chair or a team. Because I'm thinking in this current reality, one of the most difficult things in sustainability is people getting along and working together. Because people can be very bright, you can have all kinds of great intellectual ideas and ideals. However, if we don't know how to communicate with each other, and there isn't anybody I know who doesn't have some baggage, and some of us have more baggage than others. And if we get triggered, we need to have a communication skill. So that's why I like the idea as a model of co-chairing. And the reason I say that, we're in most institutions, top-down hierarchical organizations. And to have a horizontal leadership and practice is not what is in the culture, but I think is a useful element to put in. So this committee didn't have a check-in question for the first 7 years or so I was on it. It took us 7 years to get, let's have a check-in, and then rotating chairmanship. So I think it's all about us owning the committee, feeling involved, and having ownership in it, rather than we come expecting to get information. And so that's my rationale. Now, at the university, it was very hard to get it in a top-down. We tried to get some things to coaching. It just didn't work. So your point the best we might do is get a vice chair, and we have an agreement that it's a co-chair, or we might be able to put it in. So does anybody have any thoughts on what I just said or mentioned?
I would just respond to Justin's point. I mean, not to gloss over everything you just said, but I think you would be an excellent leader.
Thank you. I
You
appreciate
are an
that.
ex.
Yes, and as I said, I am happy to do whatever the committee would vote and like, so. I can, if it works to have co-chairs, that would be wonderful. If it works that the committee votes to put somebody in the chair position and somebody else in the vice chair position, but yeah, whatever works best for the committee.
I would say it really comes down to what you and Effie would want to work out, because for me, either would be fine. I don't have a real strong preference. I think the way it would play out would probably be the same.
And I don't want to speak for Effie, but she had asked me after Bert had spoke to her because of her concerns about travel and knowing that we work together well and we can communicate. And so one of us can pick up where the other one leaves off if one of us isn't able to be here. And so I think that's what, at least part of what led her to asking if I would consider sharing that role with her. And as I said, I'd be happy to do that.
And I brought it up at this meeting because I thought January meeting, the beginning of a new year, would be a good time to consider what would be best for the committee. And I would hope we'd have a forum. And as I'm willing to do whatever I think, that's what my current thinking is. But I think it's an open discussion as to what our result is, what we want to do. And it's stated is,
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I didn't
well,
think-
I think that I'm just being redundant, and that's what old people do, is they become redundant. These are such crucial times. I think we all need to look at what we can contribute and make the best effort we can wherever we can. And that's what I think would be the discussion next week. And that's what I see emerging as the most powerful thing yet. So we could see.
So formally, either would be okay. We just would have to
My question, yeah.
tweak-
Kate or
tweak the
Josh,
rules
do
and
you-
procedures. Do other committees have
Yeah, I just,
co-chairs or
I'm
what's it, deputy chair or assistant chair?
I'm unaware of any committee having co-chairs. There are several committees that have a chair and then a second person. The title might change, but it's essentially a vice chair.
And the reason I think that it might be difficult in organizations or certain statutes, very rarely have I had to sign it, but they want the chair to sign it.
Correct.
And if there's a co-chair, then that means getting two signatures. But I think that is so rare that it might not be an issue.
And Kate, you just pull up the ordinance there,
yeah, I just want to see if we stated chair in the ordinance, but
and I'm not sure if it's initially one of the drafts that went from the council stated the chair, but I think
think we took
legal
it.
may have changed it. And if you go to the beginning of that ordinance section, whatever it is, chapter 1, article 4, section 1, it may say like all committees will have a chair that's elected at the first meeting of the term. So if it's not in this now, and it's been years since not years, it's been over a year since I wrote that, so.
Yeah.
Well, we probably want to get it settled so we can finalize it at the next meeting
Well,
in January.
yeah, and if we were to, we wouldn't be able to deviate from the ordinance unless if we changed our portion of the ordinance, which might be a discussion worth having if we remain absent Eco Club members, just keeping us from having a forum.
Right. Yeah, that is one of my questions too.
Yeah.
is how do we address
You
Yeah.
change the,
the ordinance?
yeah, that's a simple change that I could bring forward at a meeting.
Got it.
Then we take 3 readings, but I don't think it'd be controversial. And I don't think it'd have to go to legal either, it'd just be, there's a simple amendment. So it'd be 2 months.
So Josh, the amendment would be to have co-chairs?
So the question here, just asking Kate, is if there's something in the,
Ordinance itself,
so there's
city ordinance.
in the city ordinance for all committees specifying there has to just be 1 chair. And if there's not, we'd be able to specify in our ordinance that there could be 2 chairs. I wouldn't want to tie us to 2 chairs in the ordinance because a couple of years from now, there might just be 1 person who wants to be chair.
Still gonna keep the rotating chair as just part of our.
Correct. Yeah, there was some language I included to make.
But
clear.
that's facilitator and not chair.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Kate.
Oh,
That's
that's okay.
before.
Um.
Yeah, the first sentence,
board
paragraph
session,
B,
Chair.
chair. The very first sentence says, so we can change our specific section where it's,
Within the ordinance. So could we just have a sentence that says something like, we operate with 2 co-chairs or?
with 1 or more chairs.
Everybody a chair.
Yeah. Or a chair and a vice chair as the committee sees fit or something. I don't know. I'm not, you're the legalese guy, but.
Yeah, yeah, we could definitely do that. So anything we want to do would make sense for this committee to vote on, which would require a quorum. And then I can bring it to the council under my name and say, here's some amendments I want to make where the person would just be voting on it to send it for first reading, then we'd have first reading, and then 2 weeks later would be second reading, public hearing, but we could likely pass third reading then. But I'd rather have this committee support whatever language we want to change it to. It's a conversation that needs to wait till at least next month. But those are 2 changes that we can make.
You can rough out something right now that we could.
I probably could if I had if it was on a piece of paper.
I happen to have a clipboard and
Well, I meant if this was in front of me on
on a computer. How about I give you my computer and you look it up? Could you do that?
sure, I can do
But
that.
that's probably a PDF, right?
Yeah, you could
That
probably
is-
cut and paste from a PDF. Thanks.
So do you think, since it says unless a procedure is otherwise specified in the
Yeah,
neighboring
correct.
section of the
The
ordinance?
name section of the ordinance, so I'm reading that to be the section which we wrote for the sustainability
So
committee.
it's the committee's ordinance, not the
Correct.
city ordinance. Okay, so we could,
Yeah, so we could just change our own ordinance saying that we could have co-chairs
right,
and that we can and eliminate the Eco Club portion just because they
While
haven't
we're
been here
there,
and that's keeping
yeah.
us from having a forum.
So you could
That's a good
do amendment with the 3 readings to cover both of those.
Correct.
Just having talked to Effie, can we just assume that the co-chairing is okay with both of you and go ahead with
Yes, I
that?
think
Because
so. I
otherwise we'll
mean,
wait a
since
month.
she asked me and.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe if we just assume that and confirm it at the next meeting. When we have
And
a forum.
assuming it's okay with all the other committee members.
so do we want to bring next month a redlined draft of the ordinance? Getting rid of the Eco Club votes and adding in probably a new
And the
section?
option for a chair or co-chair
Chair or.
possibility.
So then we were still, this was great conversation, but it was all spurred off of the rules and procedures. So I don't know if we closed that out yet.
anybody, I mean, we can't vote on anything, but if anybody wants any additions or if they're concerned about any sections of it, I can work on it up until the next month's meeting. But I don't think there's too much that we could change, because a lot of it's just standard committee rules. But I think the first page is probably important for us, because it just talks about why we care about sustainability.
I had one comment on that. It's a question that actually that I don't know the answer to. So when I read the last sentence in the first paragraph, as part of an eco municipality, enabling the city and its residents too. And I just wanted to ask, because there's so much traffic through the city of Portsmouth, we get a lot of visitors. Does this committee's purpose extend to enabling our visitors to enact and sustainable practices?
Yes,
Cool. Is that maybe something we want to capture in here then? The city, its residents and visitors.
And its visitors, yeah.
And then on D3, just about the minutes, if we want to hold ourselves accountable and say, instead of once completed, shall send in their draft minutes ahead of the next meeting, or just put some time limit on that? Or is that too picky?
I mean, typically they're not required by the next meeting.
I have an additional item that will speak to this. I was going to put it on the agenda. I'll bring it up now. I'd like to talk about AI minutes. I was talking to somebody who is very, very sharp, head of 200 people in a very advanced company. And he was telling me about he doesn't do minutes anymore. He does with AI, and he showed it to me. So I think, how many of you have had experience with any group that has used artificial intelligence to take minutes?
we tried here a couple times.
Yeah, we had somebody here who I was hoping was going to lead the charge on this, but he's had some personal health issues himself and his family. So that's why I'm bringing it up, because I'm not expert in this. But here's what I understand. He blew me away. He held his phone up and he said, ask it any question you want. So I said, will you ask the AI, what are the 10 most sustainable things that an individual could do to bring about a climate-safe planet? 30 seconds later, it says, oh, here are the 10. And he went through what I would have identified after 25 years of teaching sustainable living. He had it all the way down. And that was just with that. And I said, boy, how much are you paying for that? And he said, oh yeah, I have my personal account. This is not paying $20 a month, but I use it every day. Now, what I'm thinking, he says what he does now in a meeting, if we're recording the meeting, he says, you can take the recording, have the AI listen to the recording, make a transcript of it. Then you can have the AI get the main points and anybody who has responsibilities to do things identified. And then they can have it summarized and put in a form. And he says that takes around 10 minutes or whatever it is. So he said, I said, well, what would we need? We would need somebody to have the AI if the city did and be willing to just do that. So the minutes could literally go out the next day in summary form, and then you always have to read over because AI is an error. I'm wondering if that's something, rather than having a rotating secretary, and then that we do the chair facilitation, but that we consider that. I want to get people's thoughts or responses on that.
It might be worth a try if we had somebody who was really keen to give it a try, but I think that we're not in that much of a hurry to get them out the next day. I think I don't really see a big hurry up value on that, since I don't know how often anybody's reading these. It's good to have a record formally, but I don't know. I guess be open to it, but I don't know if it's that onerous that we need to change it.
Yeah, I think I'm not worried about the timing or the reading of it, but I know that when I have to take the minutes, that it takes me a day and a half, and I have anxiety. And I would prefer not to do it. And yes,
I think that the time saving and efficiency benefits are good. I think that if AI was incorporated on a regular basis, having clarification about when it is to be used and when it's not in some sort of committee thing, just to like, okay, this is when these are the types of meetings AI would be used, particularly around privacy, because it would be like a third party AI. And sometimes if you put it on one computer, it goes into everybody's systems if it's part of like a shared network. A lot of the AI companies then suddenly start popping up on other people's Zoom calls, even if they didn't directly install it, because it's like owned by the same network. So I think the privacy concerns, if those could be addressed, and then having specific use cases highlighted, like, okay, we are going to use AI for meeting minutes, but not necessarily for language drafting, for example. Like, when would we use it? When would we not? The only other thing, and this might be something that just like if people were really invested in it, we would do research and find a AI company that is maybe addressing it, would be the high levels of carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions from AI programs.
That's a good point.
Like there are so many AI companies out there. They're probably all trialing different things. But if we were to go in this direction, I would just say like, let's pick one that aligns with the committee.
I'm so glad you joined our committee.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just gonna backtrack on something I said earlier. There is a state legal, whatever law or rule that we do have to have draft minutes at least available 10 business days after a meeting. That's never usually the case, but I think a lot of committees and boards just have notes that are sufficient to count as the draft, and we also point a lot of people towards the videos, so if anybody's worried about that.
One thing that I don't know, I know that AI gets kind of rose-colored glasses, that's going to do all this stuff. But one of the reasons I find it difficult to read minutes, when people do them well, there's so much in there. And what my friend was saying was that you ask it after you get it. Now will you make it in simple language so that it's the main points, so that everybody can read it in a simple. And he said, it's amazing what it does. And so I think it might make it more accessible to everybody. So when we come in, I noticed that some of us have real wonderful proofing skills and ability to do that. But I'm wondering if that would be I'm thinking not only for us, but is this something that we explore that might be a useful tool? And I do think that even if we did it with all the electricity and the storage, and that would be, we could say, here's what our research is.
Mhm.
Is that anything that you've had experience in or would be interested in at all?
Not something I have a ton of like deep knowledge in. I do know people who might have knowledge that I could ask, just if what their idea of the landscape is and what the options might be. I don't use AI, just out of personal preference and the abundance of time I have in my day job, so
Would you be willing to just? would that
ask
be-
them. Yeah,
That'd
yeah.
be fun and report back to us,
Mhm.
or what?
Yeah, totally.
I'm not necessarily opposed to giving it a try and seeing if it works for this committee. Personally, I do feel like whether we use AI or we continue our current process, we need to come up with an outline or a structure or something for our minutes so that they're more consistent from one note taker to another. I think they can also be pretty skinny since we do have the recording that, like, if we just kind of hit the topic and maybe a few highlights and any action items, that kind of give quick bulleted points. So if people want to see the details, they can go back to the video, but they can also just say, okay, this was kind of the priorities of this topic, or these were the things mentioned or discussed in this topic, but to hear the full discussion, they need to go to the video. I think, having clear attendance at who was at the meetings and those kinds of things are really helpful to have on the minutes, just so people can see who was present and who wasn't. And I think that's important for our rules and procedures moving forward too, to be able to look back on some of that stuff. So I do feel like we need to have that conversation in general about what is a consistent format for us and what does that structure maybe look like.
Yeah, I think we basically do. Full disclosure, the notes that I'm taking right now, I'm using last month's template, which is basically the agenda and then listing in more detail each of the items listed and then trying to clearly state whether there's an action, but not getting into who said what and when. That seems like that can come from the recording, but just maybe some of the key points. Like I would mention there was a discussion of AI and that Colleen, for the action, Colleen will do some quick research and report back. And that's the discussion.
And we could research this again. I worked for an organization in Boston for several years, and some very thoughtful young people put together a format that we used for this committee for several years. And it was item, discussion, key points, who's responsible, and so you just look at it at a glance and say, uh-oh, I said I was going to do this. So Colleen could look down and say, oh, I said I would look. And so I liked that sheet and we used it and it was very effective. But then what happened was we started to turn that in as our minutes. And then we got pushback from the city. You have to turn it into our format. So then we went from that format into one where we tried to follow the city format. I actually prefer the other one because that was very simple. Now, I don't know if we're still, I might have been the same group who's accepting, but that was not acceptable before. And what I might say is in January, that might be something that the committee as a group or somebody takes up, how to get a format that's easy template for the minutes to be taken, as well as the AI and which one we want to go with. Because I agree with you that simpler is better.
We can take an action to create a template that we can look at in January, if
Well,
that's.
I
what
already
you-
have the template, and if my name were on there, then I remember to bring it. But right now, I can bring that template.
next month.
Oh my God, Bert, yeah, I hate when I make Bert bring templates.
Okay. So anything else on the rules and procedures, or do we want to come back next month and do a final vote?
Can I just, sorry,
Absolutely.
only because we talked about the students and I I appreciate that it makes getting to a quorum challenging, but do we want to remove them altogether? So I did go to Eco Club on December 4th. It was a half day, so there were probably about 15 to 20 students there. The club is still definitely the most robust according to the faculty chair. They usually have about 50 members, but I think it being a half day just before they were leaving, it was a little lighter. And I, shared what we do and that we have students as part of our committee and they are voting members and that we're really hoping we have some interest. And a couple of students potentially raised their hand as being interested. The faculty chair reached out to another teacher who is more involved in student government, and that teacher reached out to me and said that she might have a couple of students who would be interested in joining us. I have not heard anything further. But my one concern about removing them from the ordinance altogether is that I think their voices are really valuable and I know it's hard for them to get here, but I think it's important for them to feel heard and that their ideas matter and that they have a place at this table. And so if we just eliminate that entirely, is that how we want to move forward as a committee?
No,
They've been great contributors the last 2 years. It's just this year we've had the problem, but the last 2 years they were really.
Yeah, so
Fine.
I don't know if that's again, like a way that we can word it, so.
We have them vote without counting.
Yeah, the quorum can adjust.
I
or
don't know if we
how-
could do that. I would love to do
or
that. I
maybe
could
just
word
one
an
of them,
ordinance
So
that
they're
way.
not such an influence, they have one voting.
A floating quorum. When they're here, they count. When they're not here, they don't.
I think reducing it to one would be
Yeah.
an easier sell than me trying to convince the legal department we can have a floating quorum based on an eco club members are there.
so they get one vote.
One vote
That's-
versus two
that's
votes.
Good, because they're still involved and they know that's real.
Would two members have to be there to get one vote?
No, I mean, ideally, they would usually come in pairs or a pair of pairs where it would be two people in one grade, then two people in a successor grade to follow them the following year. But just any one of them could vote at that meeting.
And and I think it'd be I would say that the club has a vote and then they have to come to consensus. So I think that's a good process
So
myself.
let me reword everything I just did and finished as you were speaking.
Sorry.
That part's not tough.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jason. And by the way, for just history, the Eco Club members that we've had has been for about the last 3 or 4 years. They have been some of the most not substantive contributors to the committee. So I think it serves two functions for the committee. I think we are a mentorship and giving people access to real experience in what it's like to be in a participatory governmental body. And that's what they've expressed, some of them. And I know a couple of them now who are out in the university. I mean, it's been a really wonderful thing. So regardless of what they give the committee, I think it's good mentorship. And that's if we get 2 or 4. And I think it might be just a difficult time, or who knows what's happening in the world with young people. So just thank you so much for being there and giving the pitch. And I thought, sure, if you go there personally, oh, yes, yes. But time, maybe they're like the rest of us, is that we are in a time and period where information, decision-making, and real consequence issues are coming at us, for most of us, faster and greater quantity than any of us have experienced before. And I think it relates to your check-in question. Not only do we have the normal stuff, we have what's going on economically, politically, socials. So, thank you.
So we're about halfway through the meeting, so just to give a time check, and we are about halfway through our agenda, so we're doing great. And I'm gonna move us on to the updates. The first one is the Community Engagement Committee. Who will be giving an update on the Community Engagement Committee?
Do you want to do it generally and I can say something about December 5th?
Yes.
Sure. Well, I feel, and please feel free to chime in because I haven't been present. But I will just say, our sustainability fair is scheduled for Friday, April 11th, 2025. Initial emails have gone out to all of the participating organizations that have come in the past, including businesses, nonprofits, and city entities. We're hoping to expand and invite some more this year because we are really trying to make it more of a regional event. Our organizing committee consists of people on this committee as well as people in Kittery on Kittery Can and a couple other organizations. So we're trying to really make it more of a Seacoast event. But we will really start to have more of a push in the new year and trying to get people on board and ready for that event. And then I'm going to let Bill speak, but we wrapped up our last community climate conversation for this year on December 5th. And then I believe we will start them again sort of late spring, early summer timeframe. That's usually the schedule.
Sure. Picking up on that, at the last meeting, this committee voted to be a partner on the community climate conversation. So we talked about whether that meant sponsor, organizer, and I think we came down with the word partner, which I think works well. The December 5th was the first time we had that partnership. So the partners for that were Portsmouth Climate Action / TCAG, Transportation Climate Action Group. It's really a lot of overlap between the two, the Portsmouth Library and this Sustainability Committee. Personally, I thought it went quite well. Maybe that's because I did a lot of the organizing, but we had a good turnout counting people online, and we actually had a Zoom and pretty active participation on that. We had about 30 people, which for this series, and we've probably done, maybe 8, 9, 10 of these over the last year, was the highest. And Kate has the slides up and circulated those, I think, with the agenda for the meeting. So hopefully you can all take a look at that. Maybe just, this is the sort of tie back to Portsmouth Climate Action, and then the agenda, introduction, key concepts, Portsmouth context. So I did that, and then the panelists, we had a really great panel. The executive director of Coast, the president of the Seacoast area bike riders, Matt Glenn, and Scott Bogle, who's really the lead principal transportation planner for the Rockingham Planning Commission, which does the regional transportation planning. We had very active and engaged discussion. I think, Tyler, you were there and actively engaging. I don't think, Beverly, did you end up able to get in on the Zoom? I know you were going to come to the meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's great. So a good turnout, and other times we've been concerned that we have the usual suspects turning up for these things. It's the folks that are the most loyal turning up for the climate action plan and the Market Square vision and the bike ped plan. But there were quite a few new faces, including some people from outside of Portsmouth and the region who really could help put the discussion into a broader regional context. So it was good. The slides you have copies of, so hopefully you can take a look at that. The focus was really on implementing the climate action plan. Kate provided an update on the CAP and the next steps, which we included in the introduction, and hopefully got people thinking more about implementing the climate action plan. And Bert, you're back just in time to say that we've started thinking about Portsmouth Climate Action, a next cycle of community climate conversations. Probably the group will meet in January on the early side, and I think we'll probably invite this committee and anybody that would like to come, and maybe even we're thinking about maybe inviting some of the participants who've come to the other meetings to help brainstorm topics for the next cycle. You want to add anything? Bert, we're thinking it's a cap focus, but could be broader to sustainability depending on what topics people like.
We were tentatively thinking of January 8th.
Yeah.
And that maybe we'll put together a little notice. And I think you probably said it, it's like, this is a real opportunity, 2 years, where we have a pattern now and a structure that we can build on. And things change so rapidly. Where can we make the biggest differences? What we want to do, and I think we want to get as many items as possible, and since the Portsmouth Climate Action is voluntary, not only do we have to have a topic, but then we have to have a person or a group own it and do it because it's volunteer. So getting a broad spectrum, then to run it through the criteria of what do we think is relevant, and then is there anybody who's really willing to take it on? So that's why I think having a good group there with interest, because anything we're passionate about, you want to bring out, then you get people working together to do good stuff.
And also flexible on partners. So we've had some really excellent partners on some of the earlier climate conversations. The first transportation one, which was actually the first of the series, Portsmouth Climate Action and the TCAG Transportation Group partnered with Portsmouth Smart Growth on that. So we sort of mixed up who the presenters were from both organizations. So I think that often really strengthens the activity and gives us a greater, broader set of folks to invite and to rely on. So, yeah, so I guess that's the update. Maybe at the next meeting, we'll have some more information, and if we get ourselves organized for January 8th, we hope that everyone here can be invited and maybe join the meeting and proposing topics. You might propose a topic that you like to lead.
Yeah, that's going to be on Zoom.
Can I ask, so it sounds like this last community conversation, there was a large turnout or larger than typical. Was there something unique you guys did, or what was unique to this one, or why do you think it was so successful this time around? You're up.
Bill Lyons spent 3 months working every day on it.
Okay.
That's what I mean. That once I do think Bill has tremendous skill, information, and history about doing this kind of work. And so he was able, if we were to hire him, it would have been a lot of professional hours.
If I can do a 5-day meeting in Mumbai, I could do an 1.5-hour meeting in Portsmouth.
Yeah, but
Let's hear about that one.
and so, at any rate, different people have different skills. And that's why the meetings, and since it's voluntary, I'm interested in process. And so the audience is one thing that occurs. However, at one meeting that it probably, I don't even remember what it was that you came to or the topic, but it got you here. And so it's the unexpected consequences in systems that usually make a big difference. So it's not about the numbers. For me, it's about the process. So if we have a process that identifies what it is, Bill happened to be able to do that. I'm hoping that there are some people, when I saw you walking by South, we don't do a really big job on social media, but we're going to get somebody who wants to do that, and that might be. So we're kind of creating the path as we go along. And I think specifically Bill was able to get 3 different coalitions and communicate with them. Does that answer?
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
curious. I mean, was it on a Monday and?
It was on, it was on a, was this Thursday? Thursday, I think, and I think it was a challenge because the city had a very big decision-making meeting on the Sherburne School, and I think there were a few of the city council members that wanted to come to our community conversation, but
Hard night to have it, even if we
couldn't come. We were not able to record it, unfortunately, because I think a couple of the council members were interested in the recordings. But we were able to do it on Zoom, but I think we know how to record it for the next time. I think the challenge was that it had to be the owner of the Zoom account, and we didn't have the owner of our Zoom account, and we were using our Zoom account rather than the library Zoom account.
Still can learn as we go.
So we learned as we went. I think one of the bigger challenges is how to get the word out so you can invite a broader range of folks. I think we really benefited from the library's newsletter, which has a really large circulation, and the city manager's newsletter. So it was prominent in both of those. It was a little hard to get it out early enough, but it came out enough ahead that I think it helped. And each of the panelists from Sabre and from Coast and from Rockingham Planning Commission, I think put it on their social media, and I think Portsmouth Smart Growth sent it out, and the Reeville Station sent it out. So that's really the hardest thing of putting it together.
Thousands.
Yeah. So we got 30 out of thousands.
30 positives.
I'd be curious, Beverly, you came to, what got you involved and how are you, what got you to a community conversation?
What got me to a meeting?
Yeah, what got you to the community? Did you read it in the paper? Did somebody know? What brought you?
How did you
Oh, the
find?
meeting here?
No, the December 5th.
You
Oh,
said you-
the library.
From the library.
Just from the library, singing in the library. Because they have 6,000 people, or 4,000 or 6,000 people they send it out to. And maybe we get 1, 2, 3, 4.
They do a really excellent job on their programming. It really is the strength of the library. And they had the beautiful poster that Jess did on one of their little pieces of paper that everybody comes into the library and picks those things up because they're colorful little things about happenings. And this was one of those.
All right, I'm gonna keep us moving. So that was Community Engagement Committee. And now we will talk about the New Hampshire CAP.
Yeah, on that, this is run by the Department of Environmental Services, and they've been working at it for about a year. This is are these the slides that I sent? Yeah, they just sent those out this afternoon. They're really a nice set of slides that they did for the kickoff meetings last week. There was one online on the 11th and one in person on the 12th. I went to the one online, really very informative with it. The cycle here is that the state had to do a preliminary climate plan. They had funding from EPA to do that. And once that preliminary climate plan was accepted, then they got money to do this much more extensive, comprehensive plan that is due, I think, in a year. But it's a huge amount of work. And they had, I think online, it seemed like they had about 80 or 90 people participating. So I'd say to take a look at these slides. I think when you consider how much is in the Portsmouth Climate Action Plan and the challenges of getting funding to actually move ahead on these, I mean, I think that Councillor Denton and Councillor Cook managed to get 2 of the Climate Action Plan action items into the Portsmouth CAP. But if you look at those, one of those is to, I think that's later on the agenda, to add funding for trees. And the other is a feasibility study for the microtransit shuttle loop that Councillor Cook proposed. I think those both passed unanimously. That's right.
I'll speak to them when we get to the that section.
Yeah, but to find the funding for some of these other things, I think it's this state climate plan is going to be a potentially major source of funding. So it's very important for this committee and for Portsmouth to keep an eye on that, because I think it's $4 billion that New Hampshire is competing for under the new federal funding on the climate programs. So, and that funding is intended, much of it for local areas and local partners, local governments, transportation agencies on the transportation side. So this is I think, very important for our group to keep an eye on. They are forming 7 sectoral advisory groups: electricity generation, transportation, buildings, agriculture, natural and working lands, waste and materials management. So they're encouraging volunteers that are interested and potentially able to commit to participate, I think, in 5 or 6 meetings over the next few months that are online. So I volunteered to participate in the transportation group, which I think all of the groups, I think, may have a first meeting in the middle of January, but that's on the slides. And I think that's helping shape the plan, and they will send that in and be competing for some fairly substantial amounts of funds. So you can see there on the different sectors, and you can see what's included in the transportation one. And those are the same things that are in the Portsmouth cap. It's EVs and fuel efficiency, it's public transit, it's alternative modes of transportation like walking and biking. And yeah, so definitely take a look at the slides. One thing is that as part of how they're approaching this and how the EPA has it set up for the states that are responsible for doing these, is very significant community engagement. So that was part of those 2 meetings last week, but the leads made very clear that they are willing, able, and enthusiastic to come out to the cities and towns and local communities and community groups. And so I'd like to suggest that we invite them to come to a meeting of the Sustainability Committee and give a presentation. It could be online or it could be in person. The other thing we might consider is making it a broader meeting. So it might be a meeting with this committee, but maybe invite stakeholders and the public as well, which I think would make it a more meaningful opportunity for the Department of Environmental Services to have a broader reach, but maybe include a focus on our cap as well. I mean, I think it's important to try to align the two. I mean, it's at this point, ours is done and theirs is underway. And it's the same building blocks that you see really in all caps. But I think to try to find out what's going on and where the funding opportunities are, I think is really critical. It's an opportunity.
I think that to just build on what Bill just said, if somebody did come here, either online or hybrid, and they were good presenters, it might be when we're brainstorming topics for community conversation.
Yeah.
We might kick off a community conversation by the big picture. Here's what the state's doing. Here's what our client is doing.
Yeah.
And here's what Portsmouth Climate Action is suggesting, and how can we all align and get things together. So that might be a very powerful one. That would get a lot of people if it had more scope.
Yeah, then the format could be the usual 90 minutes as opposed to having their team members come give us a 15 or 20 minute presentation. I mean, we could have a little bit of both, or we could do both.
Yeah.
I
What-
will say
yeah.
Kurt was at the sustainability fair last year talking
Ah.
about the state climate action plan,
Yeah.
and hopefully we'll get him to come back again, or somebody. to
Yeah,
come back
I
again.
mean, that's a really good contact for us. He's the community engagement leader. He's not the lead on the technical side. The technical lead is really very good. And you'll see in some of the slides where they're modeling the different scenarios. There were some interesting comments because they had quite a few advocacy groups involved in it, and they were asking some pretty hard questions like, are you open to new policies? Are you open to new regulations? Are you open to new funding sources? And they made very clear that this is intended to be a voluntary plan and that the incentives are existing incentives, or if there's additional federal funds, those will be incentives, but that it's not as ambitious as the plans in some of the other New England states where there's maybe statewide legislation with climate targets built in, that New Hampshire's doesn't really have that, and that in a lot of ways, they'll determine the goals and the targets based on what they think they can do voluntarily. So some differences.
All right, thank you for the update. Any additional comments or questions?
How would folks feel, because I've had the contacts with Kurt, who's the community engagement guy on the transportation side, just to say that we were talking about the possibilities of a meeting in Portsmouth, possibly with this committee. Is that something that could be scheduled? Because I think they're on a pretty tight schedule, so we would probably want to do it in the first quarter, I'm guessing, but he could let us know what's possible. But I think they'd be very, very happy to come meet with the committee.
I personally would be in favor of having them come as soon as they were available.
Yeah. So how about if I check on possibilities and we can report back at the next meeting? If it looks like a really tight schedule, then maybe Kate can do some coordinating with the committee on schedule possibilities.
Special meetings.
Yeah, and on January 8th, when we talk about community climate conversations, maybe we can talk about maybe doing something with this committee and with New Hampshire DES.
Fantastic. We are moving on now to Bright Action.
Oh, so the only update for that is that we officially signed a contract to pay for another year.
It's official.
Woohoo.
Do we have any new, on the numbers? We were 87 last I saw.
Ooh, I don't know. Does it say if you just Google it? I don't know.
Are you familiar with Bright Action?
I am. I have not gone into the app at all, but I looked at the website today.
Well, if you sign up, you make it go from 87 to 88.
You'll get a committee gold star.
Wonderful.
Are you familiar with it, Beverly? It's it's an app that the city is sponsoring. When people go on, it takes your profile and it'll tell you specifically what it is that you might be able to do to include, to make your carbon footprint less. And so you already probably have done a lot, but then they say, well, here are some things, given what you've told us, might be your contribution. And what's nice, it hasn't really worked that well yet, but that's what we're hoping. The community starts to see how we are doing as a community. So it has individuals and community. So if there's 2 more people, that would be great. Have you looked at it, Tyler?
Just from the last time you mentioned it, I looked at the website.
Did it interest you at all?
No, I mean, I think I have a pretty firm strategy based on the federal and state incentives on what I want to do next.
Yeah.
So I'm just following that as fast as I can.
I find, that's what I find. We're looking, they apparently done a new app that people can do on their phones that can get young people. Or anyway, we'll see how it evolves. They're trying to find their way to engage.
I wonder if that's something we could weave into a community conversation.
We were hoping at the end of every conversation, we could say, well, if this conversation is about this, here's the place. Like you want to know more about heat exchanger, you want to know more about induction ovens. It's a good, easy resource.
Or the answer to the question of what you can do.
Or what you can do.
No, because, for example, it would tell you the greenhouse gas reductions if you shift it from driving to walking, biking, or public transit.
So I have gone on this website before and I, after 5 minutes, couldn't figure out how to use the website, so I X'd out and haven't gone back to it yet. And just an idea, but if there was, I don't know, like 60 minutes of walking through how to use the website,
We could have
just an
a,
idea.
there could be a community conversation on Bright Action.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
could be, and they tried to make it, I originally found it very frustrating to get on. They worked on that and tried to make, you might try it again and see if it's less frustrating. But that would be something to bring up as a idea.
It could be very interactive where people could be,
Come with
giving
your
their data.
your computer and we'll get 90 people to sign up that day.
There you go.
Should say before we, contract signed, but I guess when it starts in 2025, do we have a new goal that we'd like to have on the website? Cause currently our goal ended in June 2024. So we wanted 100 tons of CO2 reduced by June 2024.
it would be nice to have a kind of an alignment with the cap of that. So even,
With the net zero
yeah, even
deliveries.
though it's not, Bright Action is going to get people to support.
Does it have the number of participants?
85.
85. So if we could get 90, we're going.
All right. So we'll move on to additional CIP proposals funded in the budget. Is that your
Sure.
Josh?
The we had very limited success at the city council meeting where we voted on the CIP recently. Those not familiar, the CIP is the capital improvement plan, which Bert got correct earlier. It's a 6-year funding plan. It doesn't commit the city to anything. Every item on it would have to be bonded at a city council meeting, which would require a 2/3 vote, but it's a plan when it comes to actually borrowing the money. And there were 3 items, which originated from this committee that were brought to the city council to be voted on. I brought 2 of them, Council Cook brought 1 of them. The first one, which I brought forward, which did not pass, was $100,000 in general funds, so that's taxpayer funds, to go towards a study this upcoming fiscal year for decarbonization plan. So no money in it would actually go towards decarbonizing the city's fleet. It would all go towards hiring a firm through the RFQ process to come up with a plan similar to how a firm came up with the climate action plan that would then meet with all of the department heads, see what vehicles we had, see what's currently out there now, see what's forecasted to be out there in the future, and then come up with the plan to actually start cycling out the city's vehicles or rolling stock to be replaced by electric vehicles. Unfortunately, it was a 3-6 vote with councilors Tabor, Cook, and myself voting for it. It's to Bill's point. A lot of these things aren't funded, whether it be in the state's soon-to-be comprehensive climate action plan or the city's climate action plan. There's no actual funding before them until it gets passed. So that was defeated. It could be brought back in a future year. The next item on it, which had limited success, was the micro transit study for $100,000. So the study itself, it passed unanimously. Bill had described the study, but the difference in this being that's $100,000 in funds that's not general funds. So general funds, think of as taxpayer money essentially. The goal is for the Sustainability Planning Department to find grants out there to pay for the study. So although it passed 9-0, there might not be any funds available, so it might not happen. I did not want to rely on grants to fund the decarbonization plan because I don't think those funds will be out there this upcoming year, and the only way to guarantee it would happen is if it was taxpayer money. But due to the increase in valuations or whatever else, the support wasn't there. But there was some support for the increase in funding for the trees and public greenery. There's $20,000 allocated every year for the next 6 years for, I don't want to simplify and say more trees, but trees in general. The goal was to increase it to $100,000. It didn't seem like that support was there to do it. Public Works Director Peter Rice did a great job of saying what he could do with the money. At the last meeting, Tori Brooks brought up a couple ideas, what could be done with the increased funding, tree inventory, so on and so forth. She sent me a report which she had worked on it. I presented some of those ideas when Peter Rice came up. He said the focus with the additional funds would be for the city's urban center, which I thought was great, to increase tree coverage. One tree specifically that came up because it keeps having to be replaced. If you're familiar with downtown, where Congress Street and Fleet Street connect, there have been multiple trees there. None of them have taken root. My favorite was black birch, which lasted about 2 years. And the goal with any increase in funding would be to engineer parts of downtown to be better for trees. So it wouldn't just be brick sidewalks, the trees would be able to survive. And I believe the urban cores, just walking downtown, you could feel how much warmer downtown is versus anywhere else in the city, partially due to the bricks, partially due to the lack of tree cover. What I was able to do, instead of passing $100,000 every year, it's slowly walking it up. So it doubled the current budget from 20,000 to 40,000. So there's a doubling this upcoming year. Then every following year increases by $20,000 till it gets to $100,000. Now that could be changed the next time a year from now when a CIP is voted on, but that's where things currently stand. So the no funding for the decarbonization study, possible funding but support for a microtransit study, but there is a doubling of funds for trees and public greenery, but it's not the fivefold increase, it's a doubling.
On the microtransit, I think that Councillor Cook's motion that passed unanimously was for a microtransit / shuttle bus loop or hybrid, which I think is very important because microtransit sometimes invites criticisms for being expensive. And I think there's some support in other places in the city for that. And one of the examples that we've been giving has been of some best practices in different places that have been public-private partnerships. So I think when we refer to it, we should refer to how it ended up. I think the cap says microtransit. I always hoped it would say microtransit shuttle loop bus, and that was something we talked about quite a bit on December 5th, which would be maybe a way of realigning or creating a new bus route within Portsmouth that would allow people to get to key destinations without transferring. And with C&J starting to charge $4 a day for parking starting January 17th, I think there should be some interest in having more destinations connected directly to downtown and to C&J and Hospital and Jones Building, West End, and all within Portsmouth shuttle loop, or a hybrid where it could be one thing during peak periods like the shuttle loop and the microtransit maybe off peak. Same vehicles, same drivers, but I think that the idea is that this study would look at some new and innovative ways of getting people onto buses, because as we noted on December 5th, there's only 1% of Portsmouth trips are by public transit.
Thanks for the update. Any other comments or questions? All right, so we've got about 25 minutes left. We have one more item and then we'll do our checkout. items. So the last topic is the Jones Avenue landfill solar.
Kate, did you sit in on the meeting recently?
I did not.
You did not, so. Where those not familiar about the Jones Avenue landfill, currently the use for it is passive recreation. An idea which I brought up 5+ years ago was to possibly have a solar array on it. I didn't get very far. Now there's support on the council to explore it, passed unanimously for the Sustainability and Planning Department, essentially to see if interest is out there. I know there's interest out. Does everyone know where the Jones Ave? So if you're not familiar, if you're going out to where the Elks Lodge is, it's on the way out to Sagamore Creek. Jones Ave is the road which you take from Sagamore to Sagamore Creek. And if you're driving by it, on the right's the fenced-in area, where that dot is, right there. The other way to get there is from the high school. It's a very large site. I had someone from Revision Energy reach out to me, and I believe they said there's 2 megawatts worth. I'm not good with exact numbers, but I believe they said it could do 800 or so houses worth of electricity potentially based on the size of it. I know the real people spearheading this are on the Energy Committee. And I believe members of them met with staff to come up with a next steps. And I don't know if it's gonna be in the form of a request for information or request for proposals. The one thing which I had recommended is anything that goes out there, include the actual option to build, because the one way to see if there's interest in the site is seeing if someone's actually interested in building it. But no decisions have been made as far as, does the city want to own the solar array? Does the city want to lease the land for a solar array? And we don't know the feasibility yet if New Hampshire DES would allow a solar array to be built on that site. But there have been numerous landfill sites that have been approved for solar in the past several years. And it's definitely ramping up. And we would like to do it sooner than later if possible.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Josh, for the visual,
Oh, that's
for the years. But that was.
visuals, Kate.
Well, you have
Thank
the
you
great
to-
description.
Thank you
packet.
for the teamwork. And sometimes things go slowly and sometimes they go fast. So the original, I think questions were there toxic gases and all that stuff? I think that's more or less been resolved as far as you know.
As far as I know. And there's technology out there, so the cap's not punctured.
Right.
It's actually pretty primitive technology where you put a heavy rock down holding up the solar array.
Were there any agenda items not captured
I've-
on here?
2 quick alibis. Bert, on your computer, I made a proposed change to the ordinance. It's saved just as a document. So it's a Word document. If you could send that to Kate.
Right now,
Yeah, if you would. And speaking of sending emails right now, before I forgot, I sent an email to the mayor with the city manager, deputy city manager, Peter Britz, Kate, and Bert on copy, requesting 10-minute presentation to the city council on April 7th, explaining that it's before the April 11th Sustainability Fair and Earth Day. And and said that once the dates confirmed, we would start working on the presentation at the January meeting. So.
Any other agenda items? I know you already.
Yep, hopefully if there's any further movement, I will report back.
So do we want to assign a minute taker for next month? Any volunteers?
I can do it. It's fine. Thanks, Jess.
Yeah. Bill, are you okay with facilitating next month?
Sure.
All right.
You've set a high standard.
Oh, okay. All thanks to my co-facilitator.
And you were reluctant, your reluctance was unnecessary, as you seem very well equipped to do a good job, and you did, thank you.
So much. Okay, so with that, we'll do a checkout question, and if I remember correctly, we generally just ask what your takeaway was from the meeting tonight.
I usually put it as